So the creator of Attack on Titan has once again shared regrets on the ending, and ultimately has a lot of people feeling a type of way. I gotta imagine you just hearing this right now are kind of like, wait, again? Because throughout time since the ending of Attack on Titan, the creator of Attack on Titan has had several different comments, several different responses, in general several different wordings about his feelings towards the ending of Attack on Titan. And for the most part, every time we've heard his words about the ending of Attack on Titan, it's been a little bit less on the yo, it happened and I stand by it, and more so just with many regrets. It seems as though the creator of Attack on Titan, due to whether it be the fandom's response, due to whether it be his own feelings, or due to maybe it's just a matter of time, ultimately has continued on with feeling like he didn't quite get the ending of Attack on Titan the way he probably envisioned it, the way he probably feels like it should have happened. Ultimately, the ending of Attack on Titan has not been to essentially his satisfaction, because again, we're about maybe 4 or 5 statements, maybe even more than that, since the ending of Attack on Titan that Hajime Isayama, the creator of this series, has came out and said, whether it be he apologized. There was one given point that he came out and he apologized for the ending of Attack on Titan. I think it was at like a convention of sorts. He was teary-eyed. He was like, yo, you know, my bad about it, because at the end of Attack on Titan, there were many people that were very upset and left unsatisfied by the ending. A lot of people had envisioned something very different for the ending of Attack on Titan. You got to remember that Attack on Titan was something, I want to say, a bit larger than most series in the actual sphere of anime and manga. Attack on Titan was somewhat of an anomaly. There were publications that called it a once in a decade type of anime. Honestly, I feel like it's more than that, because since Attack on Titan and well before Attack on Titan, we haven't quite had a series that had the same impact, from whether it be the opening that people just did not stop loving it, you know, being the music and the visuals combined, the feeling that you got of Attack on Titan, the fact that it almost felt like the perfect blend of a shonen type of feel, where, like, you know, you could kind of get into it and see like a boy's journey to manhood, but then at the same time it had such a dark atmosphere because of what actually was transpiring. So by no means was it just a typical shonen type of story, because hello, man-eating creatures outside of the walls, you know. So you start off and you have one vision of this whole scenario, essentially, that Attack on Titan is about getting free, defeating the Titans, and finally having a sense of peace, right? Then ultimately, after you get to a certain point in the story, which again, you got to imagine Hajime Isayama, as he's creating, as he's building, he's, you know, coming to, all right, the story's going to go in a different direction. You know, he's coming to different conclusions on how things are going to go, but he's also setting different expectations for fandoms, because as long as that series went, what was it, like 80 something chapters? Yeah, it's going to build different ideas of how the series is going to end. You get to a point, you realize that, okay, so while the Titans were technically an enemy, because hello, everything that they did, you find out that there's this whole new world outside the walls of Paradise Island, and it's like, oh my gosh, so I've been locked up in this hellhole of, you know, these Titans, these man-eating creatures surrounding and messing with my family and all this stuff, and there's actually a whole other world where people are actually living in peace and enjoying their lives, and I've been stuck in this nightmare this long. What the heck? So again, people's expectations are going to be like, all right, so maybe the whole idea now is to kind of either get back to them or figure some way to live in that type of, you know, lifestyle, so to speak. So then you get to that aspect, and Attack on Titan at that point became very honestly a lot more political. You know, there was still a lot of the action aspect and whatnot, and there was politics during certain parts of the earlier stuff as well, with like Kenny Ackerman and stuff like that, and the king, the royalty, and all of those things. So that was there for sure. But you get to that aspect and you start to question Eren's motives. Like, what is he actually trying to accomplish? Is it just straight up that now he wants vengeance against the humans that put him in this situation, right? Because initially he wants vengeance against the Titans. He vows to slay all of the Titans after all that stuff that happened with his family. But then you get to that point and it's like, all right, so he wants vengeance against the humans, and then at a certain point you realize, okay, so no. His ultimate goal is he wants to free his people from the oppression that they have faced, and the only way to do that, he comes to the conclusion, is to essentially become somewhat of a genocidal maniac. maniac, right? Like just destroy almost anything and everything that opposes his people. He has to do it mercilessly. We see to a certain point where it really looks like, yo, the person that we once loved and knew and had such a beautiful, bubbly personality and a heart of gold, so to speak, has become so cold. What happened here? How did we get to this point? But again, as the viewers and as well, you gotta imagine the author, everybody's looking at this story like, okay, this is where it has to all end and Eren's character is cemented here. But then you get to towards the end, which, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Attack on Titan. If you haven't seen Attack on Titan, one, why are you watching this video? But I appreciate you. And two, go watch Attack on Titan. And while you're at it, make sure to hit subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Even if you are subscribed, make sure that you hit all notifications. If you haven't been getting notifications from my channel and you just happen to come across this video, make sure to, do what you do, whatever you gotta do, so you can get notified on the videos. Because then it gets to a point towards the end where Hajime Isayama started to write Eren as like a little more sympathetic. You find out that all along, despite how cruel he was to everybody, despite how it looked like he was just turning into a monster, he treated the people that he loved like, just in a terrible fashion or whatnot. Deep inside, it was essentially that he was putting on a mask, he was putting on a front because he felt like he had to do that in order to accomplish this goal of, essentially freeing his people, so to speak. But then you get even to the end and it's like, was that even really the goal all along? You find out that no, the person that he loved, the woman that he loved was really the most important thing to him, regardless of what. Like, he just really wanted to be with her, and even though everything around him was going just insane, that was really what he wanted, even though again he was coming across at certain points as like cold. So there was a lot of layers to this thing, and again, a lot of expectations were put forth for what this story is going to become. How is it all going to end? How is things going to transpire? So you gotta imagine the audience has one expectation. Isayama, as he's creating this story, has his own expectations and his own idea of how things end, which at the end of the day, of course, is the author's story. And then you get the ultimate ending, and while, there was quite a bit of people, especially when the anime hit, I feel like acceptance for Attack on Titan's ending more so came when the anime came. When the manga happened, there was still a lot of people that were very much so upset with it. There was a lot of people that were very much so disappointed. When the anime adaptation of that happened, and you actually got a little bit more of a clearer picture of things, you got things a little bit more explained better, that's when acceptance and people were more so on the side of rooting for it and, accepting like, yo, it wasn't a bad ending for the most part. However, again, it seems as though even to this day, it is bothering Isayama, it is bothering the author of Attack on Titan immensely on how things ended, because he came out with a statement, and here's what he said, even all this time later, about the ending of Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan creator Hajime Isayama shares thoughts on the series' ending, now on display in the Attack on Titan Museum in his hometown as of April 2026, so this was a few weeks back. Eren became a protagonist who committed mass slaughter on a scale rarely seen in other works of fiction. As for why I conceived such a story from the beginning, part of it was my desire to create a narrative with a major twist, where the victim becomes the perpetrator. But a large factor was also my own immaturity and foolishness at the time when I was in my early 20s. That aspect became the core of Eren's character, leading to the point where he confesses not as someone forced into wrongdoing by circumstances, but as someone who has harbored a desire to do harm. However, Attack on Titan had long since ceased to be mine alone, and Eren became a character loved by many readers. In the end, without fully committing to portraying him as a detestable figure, I found myself depicting him with a certain closeness and sympathy. As a result, I feel there remains a sense of insincerity in the story's conclusion, at least in my own assessment. And what I imagine he means by that is the fact that despite that, again, everything that he does during the rumbling and, just how many people get slaughtered and how bad things really got, the narrative still points to, when he confesses how he really feels, yo, but Eren's not a bad guy, despite the fact that you've seen the circumstances around. And I honestly think that that is kind of even a lesson in and of itself of like, depending on who's telling the narrative is how things are going to be perceived by the people. So if you're getting the narrative from Eren's perspective right there, yeah, you're going to get a certain level of, well, look, he actually felt this way the whole time despite doing all of these things. Like, he was never really bad at heart. He just felt like he did what needed to be done. However, if you get it from anybody from, the rumbling, the victims of the rumbling, they're going to just tell you a whole different story. And again, that's a lesson of the victor is the the one who gets to lay the foundation of what the story actually is and how you should feel. So to be honest with you, while I understand Isayama's kind of questioning on certain things and maybe his regrets on the way he did things with the ending of Eren, you gotta imagine probably life has happened for Isayama, right? Since the ending of Attack on Titan, he's probably gotten to see certain things that maybe he couldn't see before in a certain fashion, in a different light of like, well, giving him a new perspective on what was done on, you know, the ending of Attack on Titan, and maybe it rubbed people the wrong way or whatnot. I still think that ultimately when you make a decision, yeah, you can change, yeah, you can grow, yeah, you could look back and reflect or whatnot. The fact that Isayama still to this day feels like he kind of messed up, or he needs to apologize, or he feels regrets, and all of the things that have come out since the ending of Attack on Titan, where Hajime Isayama just essentially expresses remorse towards the ending. I feel like you should just, if that was the ending that you created, that was meant to be that way. Ultimately, that was just what was meant to happen. That was how it was supposed to end. Not just talking within the confines of the story, but just that's the story he created. And I think also a part of it feels like he keeps on saying this, and that's inevitably going to be the reason why he may do another Attack on Titan. Maybe he feels like he needs to, at some given point, or he's going to feel like he needs to clear things up and make up for what he did in that first series or whatnot. So we might get Attack on Titan 2, despite everything that he said. You could tell he's conflicted, but you could tell even that he's still, to this day, reflecting on the ending. There's something there, and I do believe that this will lead to some sort of continuation of Attack on Titan, whether it be futuristic or whether he does a reboot of the series. Who knows what he'll do, but ultimately him being torn about this thing, he's probably going to want to do something about it at some given point. And also I feel like, again, what was meant to happen is meant to happen. There's nothing that can be stopped. So if you're meant to get what you want, if you're meant to go a certain direction, if it's meant to be, then it'll happen. I also think Isayama isn't giving himself enough credit in terms of the fact that Eren is pretty much a representation of majority of people, not even just like within the series. I think there's a certain level of realism to him that ultimately most people, and I think that's why you know, a lot of people gravitated towards Attack on Titan, they could resonate with, they can identify with, they could feel like that reminds me of myself. Because essentially when it all goes down to, you know, the ending of his character, and what we find out during, like, you know, the finale of the rumbling or whatnot, is the man wanted love. You know, despite all of the chaos surrounding everything that was going on, the man wanted genuine, honest love. The man wanted to protect the people he loves, protect the people that he cares about. Oftentimes, even if it meant, you know, by any means necessary, the man was willing to go above and beyond. The man was somebody that ultimately wanted to see new things, venture out, you know, not just be stuck within the confines of what he was told is where he's supposed to be. Like, this is something that I think majority of people, you watching right now, the person that is looking at me talk, you know, I think you can identify with the fact of he feels like a genuine, honest, and authentic person, that whether you throw in there that you think he made mistakes or not, you feel like, yo, that's kind of like me right there. And I think that that's something that Isayama forgets sometimes, that he crafted such a complex character that is multi-layered, because majority of times in many anime and manga, and this is no shade, but just being honest, characters are usually very much so linear, straightforward, one-dimensional, maybe sometimes two, maybe even three or whatnot. Eren Yeager has showcased as if he was a genuine person in the real world, of all of these vast emotions, all of these vast ideologies that sometimes clash with one another. Eren is like pretty much, I couldn't even tell you how many layers there is to this character that you actually get to see displayed, opposed to other characters from different series where you know, they're like, hey, I'm gonna win, or hey, I'm gonna do this, and that's about as far as it gets explored. Maybe you'll see them get, you know, upset once in a while, but Eren was just like this character that, as the series kept on progressing, kept building even further. There's more to this character, there's more to this character. And honestly, that's why the ending of Attack on Titan, while yeah, you could criticize how you feel about it, ultimately worked so well, because the character from day one has showcased throughout the series that, yo, he is complex, he's not just straightforward. Like, the kid was, you know, very young and already was deciding that he was gonna extract revenge against these man-eating creatures. As things went on, he discovered what love was, he discovered, you know, he found somebody that he wanted to spend his life with, he went that direction. What I'm saying is that Isayama having all of these feelings and regrets, I think think it also is a demonstration of the person himself, the creator of this whole thing, of being a complex person, because any other person would have just been like, yo, made my millions, I'm out of here, who cares, whatever. The fact that this is something that still, all this time later, is on his mind. He's still thinking about how the ending happened, and should he have done this, and how he portrayed Eren to be, and all of these scenarios. It just shows Isayama's character. It shows that he's just not some person that doesn't care about his work. He's not some person that is absent-minded. The man legitimately cares about this series. He legitimately cares about what he created. And ultimately, I think it's not necessarily even maybe that Eren wasn't written the right way, or the story wasn't written the right way, or anything like that. I think it's Isayama assessing his own feelings and being a complex person in and of himself. And love it or hate it, Attack on Titan's ending was phenomenal. There was even, the alternate routes and different dimensions in there as well, where Eren and Mikasa actually had a happy ending or whatnot. Like, there's so many different variables, so many different scenarios, and shout outs to Isayama for all the work that he put in. And I don't think he should be feeling any type of remorse or regrets this far out. Like, yo, you did an incredible job. Attack on Titan will be remembered for generations. They're still replaying the film in theaters and stuff like that. Like, Attack on Titan is already one. It's a great story. And yeah, Isayama, again, try and be less hard on yourself. Let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. How do you feel about Attack on Titan's ending? Better yet, how do you feel about Hajime Isayama yet again commenting on the ending of Attack on Titan and his response to this whole scenario and his feelings on this thing of essentially once again having remorse? Do you think he's just being way too hard on himself? Because that's how it comes across. But that's all I have for this one. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. Peace in. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell if you haven't already. Appreciate you.